How would you like this for your family tree? Your dad is a cheat who has lived life on your uncle's heels, literally. He falls in love, strikes a deal, yet gets cheated in return and is forced to marry the less favorable sister. Then he gets to marry your mom. That's right, the original sisters' wives. Your dad has lots of sons with your aunt, but just you and one brother with your mom. At least you're the favorite, right? Joseph. That's his family line. Born into deceit with a legacy of deceit to come. What a dream, huh? Speaking of dreams, that's where all the problems began. Joseph, Mr. Goody Two-Shoes himself, just couldn't keep his mouth shut. He shares his dreams with his brothers, basically proclaiming proudly that they will bow down to him someday. And then they start clapping, saying, "Tell us more, Joey. Tell us another one." Or maybe not. Opening his mouth wasn't necessarily wrong, but it also wasn't exactly wise. Joseph was the favorite, that was clear to everyone. And favorites, well, they tend to become more than a little self-righteous. He tattled on his brothers, just as any little self-righteous punk, obedient and respectful son would do. Now here he is wearing the Technicolor dream coat that his dad gave him. Only him. It was a robe that went to his wrists and ankles, not one for working in the fields like his brothers were doing. He's not exactly on his brother's favorite list at this point. His father sends him off to find his brothers. There he is, skipping along through the fields in that coat. His brothers see him coming from a mile away. And do they drop their staffs and go frolicking through the butterfly-filled fields in slow motion, longing to hug their little Joseph, who has just walked 63 miles to see them? Not so much. They plot. They don't just think about pulling a cruel prank on him. They plot to kill him. Next thing he knows, Joseph is sitting at the bottom of a deep, dark pit, while his brothers actually have the gall to sit by and eat lunch. He wasn't killed after all, but perhaps even more insulting was he was sold into slavery by his own flesh and blood. Now on his way to a new land, a new language, and a new culture, Joseph is a practically naked slave. But his valley quickly becomes a mountaintop as he finds himself working in Potiphar's house. It was like being a butler at the Ritz. He was living the life of a slave, yes, but it was a good life. Pretty close to perfect, in fact. Except for that one crazy woman who took notice of him. But not just any woman. Why couldn't it have been just any woman, I'm sure Joseph wondered. It was Potiphar's wife. Joseph refused her advances, and his integrity, do you know where it got him? Landed in prison for 2 years. But his luck suddenly changes and he goes from valley to mountain once again. It's now been 13 years since his brothers sold him into slavery. What are the odds of that? Sitting there at the bottom of a pit while his brothers laughed and ate. Joseph was thinking, it's okay, because in 13 years I'll be the second in command of all of Egypt. Probably not very high. Yes, here he was now, governor, honored, and the most important ruler in the land. From abandoned brother to Hebrew slave to beloved and powerful leader through a harsh time of famine. And that famine, even that famine had a place in the history books for Joseph's refinement. No famine, no restoration. The lack of food in the land brought his brothers, the same brothers who left him for dead, to his feet begging for food. That famine was God's mercy on a hurting, deceitful, jealous family. Through a series of events, Joseph found himself weeping and hugging and kissing his brothers and being reunited with his father after 13 long years of suffering. Joseph lived a long, full life of deep, dark valleys, as well as mountaintop experiences. He went from the pit to the palace, and he went from reckless words to reconciliation. Now there's an example of character we can look to. From slavery to saving others. Joseph, a picture of the future Messiah.